be, I think. Um, Right now, I think we're going to pass over approval of prior meeting minutes because we have to do some work on that, and we'll get to it tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. is when we have committee. So these are not the people in the audience that should know. I need to call other people. We need to call other people. Are there any requests for bill introductions? Not seeing any. We'll move on and we'll start with the budget hearing for the office of the governor, and we'll start with Dylan Deere from KLRD. Thank you for being here. Welcome to committee, Dylan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Dylan Deere. I'm the Assistant Director for Fiscal Affairs for the Research Department. I'm joined today by Adam Proffitt, the Secretary of Administration, and by Will Lawrence with the Governor's staff to speak directly to the agency budget. And I'll keep this brief. I understand you have quite a few conferees as well. So if you have the Office of the Governor budget summary before you, here. There is no yellow sheet with this budget because there are no differences between the agency request and the HB 2007. Those were the same. And so with that noted, I'll go ahead and start diving into the budget. If you turn to page 2. So in FY 2025, the agency request is $67.2 million. That's an increase of about $3.8 million or 6% above the approved budget. There was an SGF reappropriation of $1.9 million, which is described in 1. So you have $1.1 million for the domestic violence prevention grants, $337,000 for child advocacy center grants, $109,000 for CASA grants, and about $367,000 in the Office of the Governor operations. Those first 3 bullets, that's largely a timing issue. So the legislature appropriates a certain amount of grant dollars. However, if the grantees have not completed all of the paperwork to draw those down, it ends up like still stuck in the budget of the Office of the Governor. And so you have to wait into the following fiscal year in order to make those distributions. So my understanding is most of that money has already been distributed. There are no supplemental requests for FY 2025. If you turn to page 3. So if we look at the Federal Grants Office, the revised estimate for the Governor's Grants Office adds $3.8 million, all from federal funds, and 1 FTE position for a grants program specialist. This includes $2.2 million for regular grants. It's about $1.1 million in justice assistance grants, about $403,000 for crime victims assistance grants, about $359,000 for family violence prevention grants, and there's about $1.6 million in ARPA funding. We see these adjustments in the current fiscal year in federal funds all the time. Again, that's just that timing issue of when those funds are distributed. Particularly like with the ARPA grants, these were actually moved between programs, but this is a previously approved ARPA expenditure that was related to, I think the Grants Office is managing some of the local law enforcement equipment grants that's going through there.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
As long as you have told where you're going to spend ARPA funds, you can hang on to them. I thought we had to have them done earlier, gone.
No, they just have to be committed.
Okay.
So they had to be committed by December of last year.
If that was it. So I just wanted to make sure.
And there is some flexibility on that rule from the treasurer, the federal treasury. And that flexibility allows in the FAQs, which they've distributed, that if you don't, everything has to be committed upfront. So that is a drop dead deadline. But if you don't completely spend every dollar, okay, you can recommit them. Okay, so that is allowed. And we don't know if those rules are going to stay in place. We'll see what happens, but that's the current rules.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
No problem. So for Office of Recovery Operations, this deletes 5 FTE positions inside the Office of Recovery. This is really beginning the wind down of Office of Recovery Operations in 2025. For other adjustments, the agency's estimate deletes 1.8 FTE positions in 25. This includes additions to the Office of Lieutenant Governor, 1 FTE positions, and the Governor's residence, 0.3 FTE positions, offset by reductions to the Office of the Governor, 3 FTE positions. So the majority of the adjustments are just reclassification and shuffling of existing personnel. So what's happening is people are moving between different programs. But overall, it's a deletion of 1.8 FTE positions in FY 2025. Unless there's any questions on 25, I'll move to 26.
Are there any questions on 2025? If not, we'll move on to 2026. Thank you, Dylan.
You're welcome. So the request in 26 is $58.3 million. This is an all funds reduction of 3.3. It's an SGF increase of 24,730. So it's about 5.3% down all funds, about 0.1% increase in the state general fund. So there are no enhancement requests as part of the governor's budget submission. If you look in the federal grants office, okay, it's a reduction of $3.3 million. The majority of that is the assumption is all those ARPA funds for those local law enforcement grants will be spent, and so that's a decrease of $3 million. The agency also reduced the estimate for the crime victims assistance by $945,000 and the FIPSA or Family Violence Prevention Fund by $1 million. And these decreases were partially offset by an increase in an estimate for the justice assistance grants. So overall, it's a deletion of $3.3 million. All these numbers are estimates that are received from the federal government about how much federal funding is anticipated from these various grant programs as they come in. If you turn to page five for all other adjustments, the agency's request adds $22,000, including $24,000 SGF, but deletes 6.8 FTE positions. The FTE adjustments are really just carrying forward those same FTE adjustments I discussed in FY 2025. And then I won't discuss them again. It's the exact same thing. So just throw that shuffling of different positions and kind of that adding of the 0.3 FTE positions in the governor's residence for that groundskeeper. On the very back page, you have your reference tables. So obviously from an all funds perspective, if you've looked at this budget, it exploded in 21. And that's all that ARPA fund money that was going through the federal grants office. And then there were some mergers, and then that's what you're really seeing in 23. There's some mergers of various programs like the Office of Lieutenant Governor and the grants office and everything was merged into one. So you're seeing some increased expenditures there. And you're also seeing some increased expenditures largely around domestic violence prevention and other grants that are funded out of the SGF and approved by the legislature in previous years. With that, I would stand for questions on the Office of the Governor.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Dylan? Representative Lynn Melton. I'm sorry, Representative Melton.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify one point. So in regards to the money for the agencies that do all the domestic violence and that kind of work, which we need, so they aren't getting cut in funds. The money's just coming from a different source, coming federally, not through the state. Is that correct?
I think you're going to hear a lot about that from our conferees, but I'll give you a really brief background, okay, which is that this Federal Crime Victims Assistance Fund, okay, used to be annually capped, okay, and then they sort of raised that cap quite a bit, but the fund is depleting, and as that fund depletes, less money is available for distribution. In response, the legislature has increased the amount of SGF funding for these grant programs over the last 5 to 6 years pretty substantially.
Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm looking at this last table, and you see the explosion starting in 21. Before that, the all funds was 32 million, and then 25 at 67, and then drop into 58. So what's the taking away all those funds that came in? What's the growth from 20 to 25 that's still there?
Yeah, so really, I mean, if you take it to the 32 to the 58, you're getting a little bit more.
Okay. Well, that's still almost
because
double.
there's no ARPA fund expenditures. I don't think, well, there is a little bit of ARPA fund expenditures, but that takes out the majority of the grants that are going.
Okay. Well, and then even with that, from 32 to 58, it's all still almost doubled. So I'm just curious what drives that?
It's largely a result of increases in federal funding. Yep.
All right. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you, Dylan.
You're welcome.
And I believe we're going to call up Adam Proffitt, Secretary of Administration, to finish up with this. I thought I saw him in, oh, it's going to be Will Lawrence. I lied. Welcome to committee. Thanks for being here.
There you go.
Would you also tell us your name and your
Yes.
title for the WebEx people?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Will Lawrence, Governor Kelly's Chief of Staff. Members of the committee, thank you for the chance to testify. I submitted some written testimony. Appreciated the frequently asked questions ahead of time. Address those in the testimony. Won't go through that, but happy to answer any questions that you may have from that. I'll be pretty straightforward. We've tried to keep this as simple as possible over the years, despite the recovery office and the ARPA money that's come through. And so from the governor's office and the main operation, you won't see any increases. Didn't ask for any enhancements or anything along those lines. So strive to keep it flat, not make any changes to FTEs and stuff like that, other than some of the stuff you saw in the recovery office as we're starting to wind things down. I do think there's about $5 million in the recovery office for expenditures in this budget, which is certainly part of that as well. But we are looking forward to that process winding down and getting to the point that we're back to a true budget, which of course still has quite a bit of federal funds through the governor's grants office. With that, happy to stand for any questions.
That was pretty quick. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lawrence? No? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a long list of wonderful people that have done a lot of good things. We have your written testimony, so if you would shorten it so that we don't spend all afternoon, I think it will do well for you as well as for us. So we'll start with Michelle McCormick, Executive Director of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. Members of the committee. Michelle McCormick. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. And thank you so much for having us. And you do have my written testimony, and it goes into a great deal of detail. So I will just hit the high points for you. For those who don't know, the Kansas Coalition is a nonprofit organization, and we represent the 25 programs across the state of Kansas who provide the direct services to victims and survivors. We also provide our organization provides a lot of training, consultation. We accredit those programs. And so, but we all work together as a network in order to make sure that victims and survivors in Kansas are served. I think one of the things I'd like to point out is that these dollars are called domestic violence prevention grants, and it's listed that way, and it's been listed that way for a very long time. But I think it's important for you to know that these dollars actually are the most comprehensive dollars that support the intervention services as well as prevention. And so what I mean by that is that this is a great deal of support that's provided so that our programs can shelter folks. They can answer those helplines 24/7. Many of those calls that come in are of the urgency of a 911 call. Folks are calling sometimes during incidents of violence, sometimes right after, when the incident is very traumatic and they've experienced a great deal of harm. And so these services are offered at the time of crisis. And so hotlines, responding to the hospital, when a sexual assault survivor comes in to get a sexual assault exam. And so they are at the time of acute crisis. But also, a lot of folks don't know about our agencies is that we continue to serve victims and survivors across their lifespan. So recovering from trauma is not linear. And folks need support at the time of acute crisis, but they also need support, ongoing support sometimes, counseling, support groups, those kinds of services. So I wanted you to know that these dollars, and although there is prevention involved, we go into schools and we try to educate about healthy relationships, and we work with law enforcement and prosecutors and that multidisciplinary response to try to prevent domestic and sexual violence. This funding really does support the intervention services that are critical as well. I don't envy the job that you have ahead of you, given I imagine I am not the only entity who's going to be asking you to consider an enhancement to what is recommended in the House bill. But we are requesting a $2 million enhancement based on the fact that in 2024, over 4,600 Kansans were not able to access shelter in our state because the programs were at capacity. And so we're so grateful for the investment that the state has made, in particular, given that the federal dollars plummeted for us. And it's my job to ask, right? That you consider an enhancement in order to help us serve those folks who are unserved. So,
Okay. My suggestion is not to use the dirty word enhancement,
okay.
since the Legislative Budget Committee wanted to get rid of any enhancements. So in the future, leave off enhancement.
Investment. I
You go
would ask for
much
your
better.
investment in
So
our
that's
programs.
just for everyone to remember. That's the enhancement is a 4-letter word and you don't want to use it in the Budget Committee. So does anyone have any questions for Michelle? If not, thank you for shortening it. Thank you for helping us out and giving us some information.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to someone who's on WebEx, who I know personally, Jennifer Hecker. Where are you, Jennifer Hecker, from Options in Hayes, Kansas?
I am here. Can you see me?
Yep, now we can. I can see your
Okay.
quilt.
All right. Hello, and thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Jennifer Hecker. I am the Executive Director at Options Domestic and Sexual Violence Services. We are located in Hayes, and we have a satellite office in Thomas County, and we serve 18 counties in rural western Kansas. About 76% of our counties are rural communities, so you can imagine the resource desert that is Northwest Kansas if you are experiencing domestic or sexual violence, stalking, or human trafficking. So I did want to thank you for the enhancement last year. It certainly helped our organization greatly, and you can read some of the fun adventures we had in some of the deferred maintenance that the SGF increase helped us with last year. And I want to say, like Michelle said, we understand that everyone is coming to you right now, hat in hand. We are doing the same. There is so much more work that needs to be done to protect our Kansas citizens from the scourge of domestic violence and sexual assault that is ravaging our state. There is a lot more to do. Our advocates are the first responders, often for survivors. They are working tirelessly to address the critical needs that survivors have when they call in the middle of the night, when they meet survivors in emergency rooms, police departments, sheriff's departments, health departments, schools, and sometimes just on the side of the road or at a gas station, to provide that, that immediate crisis intervention and the safety planning. Those advocates are making sure that victims are not alone in their darkest hour. That work is not limited, however, to the immediate crisis. They provide long-term support throughout the lifespan of the survivors that we work with. Again, as Michelle mentioned, it's not recovering from domestic violence is not a one and done issue. It's very complex, and it takes time to help people with housing and counseling services and the resources they need to move beyond simple survival mode, but to actually become thriving members of communities again. And so with that expanded additional dollars, we could actually move the needle in our community. We could expand housing, which is gravely needed across the state. I can give you an example. In my community in Ellis County, we have a shelter. We have one shelter bed for every 5,250 people in Northwest Kansas. Compared that to other shelters in the state have about one bed for every 2,000. And so what often happens is people end up staying with their abuser. They end up homeless, or they couch surf when they can't find a place with with friends or acquaintances. Often they are just simply acquaintances. They might engage in urban camping, living in their vehicles, living outdoors. They may move in with family members who don't have the supports that they need, or it may not be safe. They may shelter hop. They may stay in hotels that they can't afford and don't bring them the stability that they need. And honestly, the most tragic thing And the most common is that they end up going back to their abuser because the resources are not there. And none of those situations offer safety, offer stability, or offer recovery services. In fact, they put them at greater risk for further violence, exploitation, and trauma. And survivors and children, certainly in Kansas, deserve better than that. With additional dollars, we would actually be able to help many of the victims that are experiencing complex trauma like PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and hypervigilance that often persists when domestic and sexual violence and other abusive situations happen. We can provide additional supports for children who witness or experience that violence early. That early intervention can mitigate the long-term impacts of children and break that cycle of violence for families moving forward. And additional funding would help us to bring in programs like transitional housing that now become possibilities to provide safe, stable housing for victims while they're working towards their own independence. And finally, just reducing barriers. We can have more of our advocates that are mobile and going to the communities and serving people in the communities where they live and breaking down those economic barriers. Transportation is often an issue. I can give you an example. In Ellis County, we've lost our Greyhound bus service. And that was the one service that we were able to use to help survivors get to safety outside of our service area. And now we are taking on the financial and time burden of doing that ourselves because those resources have left our community. And that continues to happen. So, we're asking for this to help meet the needs that are not being met, to strengthen our programs and to bring people the life-saving services that they need. We have two communities, one in Russell and one in Thomas County, who are interested in bringing lethality assessment protocols and high-risk teams to their community to help eliminate domestic violence murders. And we don't have the funding we need to make that program happen. All we need is a little funding to keep people safe in our community, and that's what we're asking for. So thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to helping every Kansan have an opportunity to thrive in their community. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of the 18 counties that you assist, do any of those counties help you out as far as assist you with extra money or any funding at all?
Yes, we get about $20,000 from counties and about $30,000 from various cities.
All right. Are there any other questions? Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And do you search for grants on your own as well?
Yes, we do. We do. Federal, local, and state grants.
All right. Are there any other questions? Not only was nice to hear from you, it was nice to see you since I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. Nice to see you too.
No, I know. Good to see you. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. Whitney Love, am I saying this correctly? Lovell? Is that the right way to say their last name?
Make a correction here. My name's Casey Dalkey. I'm not Whitney.
Okay.
We did have some member centers of our organization turn in some written testimony only. And so I am going to be the only one of that list that will be providing oral testimony today.
So everyone else on my,
I might need to see an agenda just to be sure. We had, let me see.
Child Advocacy Center of Sedgwick County.
Yep, those are all going to be written only.
Yes, and they're so, you're not here for CASA.
No, ma'am.
No,
Nope.
ma'am.
Casey
Okay.
Dalkey, Executive Directors for Children's Advocacy Centers of Kansas.
Okay, all right.
Are you ready for me or is there someone else?
Nope, I'm ready for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members of the committee, as I said, Casey Dalkey, Executive Director for Children's Advocacy Centers of Kansas. We are the state-level network that provides support and technical assistance to all 18 child advocacy centers across the state of Kansas. We provide comprehensive services, nonprofit organizations to child abuse victims and their families, excuse me. We are community-based. We pride ourselves in the child-focused friendly setting that we provide children an opportunity to disclose the details of their abuse. We also coordinate what we call a multidisciplinary team response. What this means is prior to the CAC model, we had children go to the various organizations that needed to see them for their law enforcement or for their criminal investigation. With the CAC model, those organizations come together for the needs of the child. So I'm talking law enforcement, child protective services, prosecution, medical providers, mental health professionals, advocates, and forensic interviews. Through this approach, not only is it trauma-informed, reduces that level of secondary traumatic stress for the child who has to potentially retell their story multiple times. At a child advocacy center, we come together reducing that trauma, but also providing cost efficiency to the state. Prior to, the original investigation process was just under $4,000 a case. With CAC model, we're looking at just under $3,000 a case. The importance of CAC work. The multidisciplinary team response also provides an increase in probability of substantiation of child abuse cases, as well as supports successful prosecution in court. And what that means for us is safer communities. When I was providing direct service work myself, that was something that was very impactful for me to realize that a single offender could have multiple victims, multiple child sexual abuse victims through the course of their span without being held accountable through the judicial process. We also offer those timely trauma-informed interventions early on, which helps reduce those rates of long-term post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. For those of you who have not heard of the ACEs study, Adverse Childhood Experiences, that's a good one to take a look at. Early intervention is key and does reduce those costs down the line for long-term health impact and risks that survivors have to go through. We're talking treatment for long-term depression, diabetes, heart disease, certain types of cancer are all linked to, in that ACEs study, unresolved trauma from childhood experiences. Currently, we're navigating a new and innovative program for problematic sexual behavior, cognitive behavior therapy for children that experience problematic sexual behavior. What this looks like is helping children correct that behavior so that we are not expanding all of our money towards foster care, long-term foster care stays, or long-term wait lists on PRTF, psychiatric residential treatment facilities. Our centers are taking that initiative to be trained in that treatment model, and we are the only organizations in Kansas currently providing that type of service for our children. And as Ms. McCormick stated before me, it is understanding where we are at currently, and I know that making ask for an additional increase in this budget to support the work that we do, it is a tough time to do that. But where we're currently standing to meet the need of child advocacy centers across the state is an increase of $3.8 million. What that is $3 million for existing centers to expand their programming to meet the various needs of service provision, as well as we did a survey of our field of work in 2023 based on wait lists, based on having to triage child abuse cases, determine which child's abuse is worse, to see them first. We asked our centers what positions they felt like they needed to meet the needs in their community. In 2023, we're serving just around 4,000 children and their families. And so compiling that information led us to the $3,800,000 for new startup CACs. There's currently 32% of the state that does not have access to a child advocacy center. And we don't like the fact that there's child abuse victims out there that don't have access to services based on their zip code. And so that will be our ask for increase, our investment, if you will. And with that, committee, I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you, Casey. Does anyone have a specific question for Casey right now? Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you also receive grants from, or money from other sources too?
Yes, Representative, great question. That is accurate. Community-based foundation grants, federal grants, and state as well. We also do the best we can in fundraising and donations.
Are there any other questions for Casey at this time? If not, thank you, Casey. I appreciate it.
Madam
And
Chair.
thanks for coming. We appreciate that very much. We'll next go to Dina Gage, State Director, Kansas Court-Appointed Special Advocates. Welcome to committee. My sister is a CASA volunteer in Georgia, so I hear a lot about it.
I was not prepared for a verbal oral testimony today, so
that's all
I do
right.
have my written testimony.
You do have your written testimony, and
yes.
no one will complain if you did not want to give.
I am happy to answer any
Not
questions.
that we don't want to hear from you.
And I'm happy to share a little bit more about CASA and the work that we do. If you would like, I'm happy to do that.
Just briefly, that would be great.
Okay, CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates. And once a child is in the system and a judge can appoint a CASA to the case for a child who has experienced abuse and neglect. And what we do is we provide that one-on-one advocacy to the child. So as we know, within the system, there are many times where the child gets placed in a different home. So they can have multiple foster homes, multiple caseworkers throughout the time that they're in custody of the state. What our CASA advocates do is they are there for that child through the duration. So they are the one constant in that child's life during this upheaval time in their lives. So they are able to be there for that child. We visit them a minimum once every 30 days, but more frequently than that is the most of the time. We are there to provide a voice for the child in court. We do all of the information gathering. We're able to speak with all of the adults that are in the child's life, whether it be teachers, a coach, whoever it might be, the foster family, the biological family, and gather all that information. Make sure we understand what the needs are of that child and those needs are being met, and make those recommendations to the court so we can ensure that is being done. And like I said, we are there during the entire time that child is in custody of the state once we're appointed. So like I said, when they get moved, we're right there with them. So we're that one constant in the child's life.
Okay, the other thing I just want you to tell me is what your specific ask is for. So that's one of the things we're 1.2 million, a little over 1.2 million.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Sorry, I put you on the spot. You were not expecting to do this.
Yes.
That's all right. Okay.
Which is not an enhancement. So just to let you know.
Well, you were listening. That
Right, I
really
was.
good. You did a good job.
I
All
was.
right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Does anyone have a question for Dina?
It's not correct.
If not, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And thanks for not looking at me like you wanted to kill me for putting you
You're
on
welcome.
the spot. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and then I think that's it for our conferees. Yes? Have I met everyone, gotten everyone up there? First, I want to tell you, no matter what we decide, I don't think there's a single one of us that doesn't see that there's a need for this, and not that we don't appreciate everything you've done. So it's a matter of the checkbook when it comes down to it. So thank you all for being here and saying something. I do appreciate that. Thank you. And then thank you to the Office of the Governor for now. And then we're going to move on to Ariana Waddell. Is it Waddell? It's Waddell in Western Kansas, is it? Is Ariana here?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and committee members. My name is Ariana Waddell, and I am a fiscal analyst representing the Legislative Research Department. Today, I'll be presenting the budget for the Office of the Secretary of State. In attendance from the agency is Jennifer Cook, the Assistant Secretary of State. If you could please turn your attention to page 1 of the budget summary. Okay. The table shows the budget summary for fiscal year 2024 to fiscal year 2026. The budget is primarily funded through the Information and Service Fee Fund, Technology Communication Fee Fund, and the Federal Help America Vote Act, HAVA. I'm going to note that there are no state general funds in FY 2025 and for FY 2026. And if you could please turn your attention to page 3 of the report. The agency requests a revised estimate of $8.6 million, all from special revenue funds and expenditure and 42 FTE positions. This is an increase of $1.5 million or 21.8% from the 2024 legislative approved amount. This includes other changes, $800,000 off from the Federal Help America Vote Act, or HAVA, election security funds, and this is to provide election security grants to counties. These grants are designed to enhance security measures by funding upgrades to physical equipment and systems in anticipation of increased election activities. And if you could please turn attention to page 4. There is also an increase of $638,000 for contractual services. This increase is primarily associated with spending on software rental and subscriptions for the HAVA program. The rental expenses are associated once again with the HAVA program to cover maintenance and support fees for the election voter information system, as well as cyber security functions. In addition, there was an increase of $135,000 for salary and wages, with an increase of 1.6 FTE positions for FY 2025. And this increase is primarily associated, once again, with salaries and employer contributions to CAPERS and Social Security. I'm going to note that the agency request includes adding a data analyst and also reclassifying 2 positions. And if you could please turn your attention to page 5, it shows that there's a decrease of $30,000 from special revenue funds for commodities and capital outlay expenditures. And I'm going to note that the agency had no supplemental requests for FY 2025, and the LBC concurred with the agency's request. Any questions, Madam Chairwoman?
Question from Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I got my answer from your frequently asked question in response to that you're totally fee funded. What's the different fees that fund the agency? I was just curious.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. Yes, ma'am. So the agency is funded through the Information Service Fee Fund, the Technology Communication Fee Fund, and also it has some federal funds as well. It primarily receives its funding from those sources of funding. Once again, they have fee funds from Information and Service Fee Fund, Technology Communication Fee Fund. Those are the 2 primary sources, and they also have federal funds. And I would also note in page, if you could turn to the back of the report on page 14. So there's on page 11, we have the list of these Secretary of State's fees. It's starting on page 11 through page 14. And also in addition, that there's more information about the fee funds on page 9 and page 10 as well, for the information service fee fund and technology communication fee fund. Any more questions for fiscal year 2025, Madam Chairman?
Are there any other questions for 2025? If not, we'll move on to 2026. Thank you, Ariana.
Thank you. And if you could please turn your attention to page 6 of the budget summary. So the agency FY 2026 request is for 8.6 million, including 42 FTE positions. And this is an increase of 1.5 million, or a 21.8% change from the approved amount, the 2025 approved amount. On figure 7, it shows the agency request. There were no enhancements in the request, but there were other changes. And some of these changes include an increase of $805,000 for contractual services. And this includes software rental subscriptions for the HAVA program, and increased expenditure for repairing and servicing fees and printing and advertising, and also increases in professional services. And if you could please turn your attention to page 7, it shows an $500,000 increase for the federal HAVA election security funds. And once again, this is to reimburse counties for approved expenses. There was also an increase of $285,000 for salary wages. In addition, there's also a decrease in all other adjustments, and this is for commodities and capital outlay expenditures, including data processing supplies, office supplies, and software, and software. Any questions for fiscal year 2026, Madam Chairwoman?
Does anyone have any questions for 2026? If not, thank you, Ariana. You did a great job. We appreciate it. And we'll hear from Jennifer Cook from Secretary of State's office.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Cook. I'm the Assistant Secretary of State for the Kansas Secretary of State's office. Ariana did a great job of summarizing our budget. I should add that with me today are Andy Burlingham, our CFO, and Sandy Tompkins, who is our deputy for administration and HR.
Is the deputy hiding behind you? Oh, okay, thank you. Welcome to committee, everyone.
As I said, Ariana did a great job of summarizing our budget. So I thought I might just take a few minutes and focus on some of the efforts we've had in the agency, some of the priorities we've set. And then I know there was a question about our fee funds, so I'll address that as well. Over the past 6 years, the agency has focused on modernizing and improving the services that we provide for our customers. And we've done this by updating our business services filing system. It was 30+ years old. So we now have a new filing system for business services. That makes it easier, faster for our business customers to file. We've also made more documents available online, and we're hoping to continue those efforts in 25 and 26. As part of that initiative, we are also planning to reduce some unnecessary filings if the legislature is so inclined to approve those for us, and the fees that go along with that. We also have a plan to reduce some of our other fees because if you'll note, our fee fund balances, particularly in our information services fee fund and our administration fund, have grown. And the legislature in prior years has expressed an interest in having us reduce those funds. So that is a goal that we have to do this year as well. And I'll touch on how we're planning to do that in just a minute. As Ariana indicated, we are 100% fee funded. We've been that way since the early 2000s. Occasionally, we do receive SGF funding for very specific purposes. Most notably, we receive SGF funds as part of a state match for any federally approved grant funds. Those are congressionally approved funds that we receive for the Help America Vote Act. But the majority of our fees in the agency are that we collect are deposited into SGF. A set portion of each of our fees, with very, very few exceptions, are retained by the agency. Most of our revenue is generated through our online biannual report filing fee. The biannual report filing is the largest filing in our agency. And for the online filing fee, we collect $100. Of that $100, $80 comes to SGF and $20 is retained by the agency to fund its operations. We receive about 110,000 annual reports a year. So that's kind of how that math works out. But in order to reduce our administration fund and our technology fee fund, which continue to grow as we receive more filings every year, we're proposing to reduce that fee that we receive for online biannual filings from from $20 to $10. So that would be a cut of $1 million per year.
And we're very excited about that in my office alone, so.
We are as well. It's a good opportunity to return something to our business filers and to bring down that fee fund as well, which is has continued to grow. We also have some other smaller filing fees that we're hoping to reduce. There are some outdated filings that our agency still accepts that no one seems to want to file with us. And so we're trying to clean that up, and then we'll reduce those filing fees along with that as well. So to answer the question about where do our fees come from, the vast majority of fees that fund the agency come through our business filings. So whether that's a formation filing that you make, or a biennial filing, or a merger, or a name change, or a dissolution, those are all of the types of filings, and that's where the majority of our fees come from in the agency. I thought it might be helpful. I know there's been some interest in performance-based measures, and so I thought I might just break out some of the things that we're doing and try and highlight those as priorities for the agency for this year. As Ariana mentioned, we are requesting funding in our elections division to employ an elections data analyst. As you can imagine, we have lots of election information that we collect from counties. We receive requests for various types of information, which we can respond to, but we would like to have an analyst dedicated to that so we can provide this information in a way that is more usable and digestible for legislators, customers, voters who request that information. So that's what that position would primarily be responsible for. We also receive requests for comparison data from one election to the other. So that's just a request we're trying to respond to that we've received. With respect to HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, that was a 2002 federal law that sets minimum standards for state to follow with respect to election administration. As I mentioned, Congress periodically grants funds to states to carry out that program. In recent years, they have provided those funds specifically to enhance election security. So we have received, in the last couple of years, we've received $2 million from HAVA for election security. We received another $1 million grant at the end of last legislative session. All of those grants require a $200,000 state match in order for the agency to expend those funds. I will note, we are very respectfully, knowing the constraints, requesting that state match. I will also note that it was not included in our budget. We were looking at whether there were any other options other than SGF for that state match. We were not able to identify them, but we did not get that request included in our budget. So that's where we're at on that. I would also add that we have 2 years from the award date to request those funds. So we are requesting them this year. If it's better, we will request them in next year in 26. As I said, we expend those for election, these AHAVA funds for election security. Most of the way that we do that is by supporting counties in their cybersecurity efforts, so they can strengthen their cybersecurity systems. We also, in 2024, provided a physical security grant program for the first time. So counties who needed to invest in better locks, better storage, better camera coverage for where their election equipment is stored, those types of things. So we supported 84 counties in that effort. The total was about 1.2 million that we provided through the physical security grant program. And so this is an ongoing activity that we will continue to do to support our counties. We also use the HAVA grant funds to support a certification training program for all 105 of our county election officers. This is captured in our budget primarily through the travel training materials for our trainer, who is Connie Schmidt. She's former Johnson County election commissioner, nationally recognized for training and expertise in election administration. So she helps us train our county election officials. She also helps them to develop policies and procedures, provide guidance when there's a new clerk who comes in. So she's an excellent resource, and we're very fortunate to have her helping us in that role. In the business services division, we have two goals. These are ongoing goals, but we're fortunate that we're able to adjust our goal upward each year. As I mentioned, we have an online system for both our formation documents and then our biannual reports. Our goal is to increase the percentage of online filers each year. In FY 2024, 82% of our formation documents were filed online. Our goal is to increase that to 84%. With respect to our biennial filings, we had 83% filed online in 2024. Our goal is 86 for that, 86% in 2026 as well. And the way we do that, we use a couple of different ways to try and achieve that goal. We send out mailings to filers, those who are still very much wanting to do things paper-based. We're trying to encourage them to move away. And we also have done some outreach to stakeholders, those individuals, chambers, other folks who work with the business community, to encourage them to maybe put a little note in their newsletter to remind them that this is a way that they can complete their filing very quickly. They can see it online immediately. And it's a more efficient process. It reduces the errors that they might make if they're filling out a paper form. We also have a policy where our staff are encouraged, anytime somebody calls and they want to file by paper, to do their best to encourage them to file online, maybe help walk them through it if they need that. Whatever assistance we can provide to get those folks to file online is a benefit ultimately to everyone. And then finally, I think a goal that our agency is very, very excited about is we have been working over the past year to develop an initiative to modernize the regulation-making process in the state. This is a paper-based process. It is an extremely intensive paper-based process, and it has remained essentially unchanged since the 1960s. So we feel like the time is now to try and achieve this. Our goal and what we're working toward is to create an electronic regulation process that will enable regulations, once they're written by an agency, to be reviewed by the 4 agencies who have to approve a regulation before it moves on further through the regulation process. So in addition to the Department of Administration, which reviews the reg first, the Attorney General's Office, the Division of Budget, and finally our office. If you think about, some of our regs are quite lengthy, and they physically travel through all 4 agencies, and the opportunity for back and forth if there are any corrections or questions, it's very easy for a page to get misplaced or something to happen in that regulation process that really slows it down. There's also very little to no transparency there. It's very hard for somebody to know where a regulation is at in the process. Our office receives questions about that, and oftentimes, where we have to direct them to the agency. So the goal is that for this is to create an electronic system where the regulation would be filed electronically. It could be reviewed by each of those agencies. There would be a trail of where that regulation is at in the process. Legislators and the public could see where that is at in the process, and we think this would be tremendous benefit to the state as a whole. So as a result of that, we have put forth an RFP. It is out right now, and we are anticipating that the first year cost would be 1.5 million for the state as a whole. We did not put that in our budget because at the time we had not completed the RFP process. We didn't have a really good idea of what that cost would be. So this is a request from our agency for SGF to support that statewide program. We did anticipate or estimate as part of our RFP that the regulatory efficiency could be as much as $900,000. So we have been able to quantify that there is a benefit to this. We think that transparency is very important in this process. I think a lot of benefit would be had if we could move that forward this year. And then finally, our last smaller goal is we are digitizing expired regulations. So the Secretary of State's office is required to maintain a regulation once it is expired. In the event that somebody wants to go back and look at what a regulation used to say, we're required to keep that. We have 6 fairly large filing cabinets full of expired regulations, and when somebody wants one, we go to the basement, we pull it, we scan it, we mail it or email it out to whoever has made that request. So we are digitizing those regulations to get rid of paper and to, again, make that more transparent for the public who may want to see an old regulation. So that's the highlights of some of the things that we're doing in the agency. I would be happy to stand for any questions the committee may have.
All right, well, thank you. Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How much, I don't know, of the voter security budget goes towards keeping the voter rolls clean, updating it, making sure as people move away from home that they don't continue to get things mailed out to them that are no longer living in this state? I'm just curious, that's a big part of security, and I just wonder how much of the budget went to that.
Sure. A significant portion of that, it's, I think we have 700,000 for our ELPIS, which is the statewide voter registration database. And so that database is what is used by the county. So our office doesn't do any entry into that. It's all done at the county level. And so that is a system that the counties use to update the voter roll.
Does the state kind of monitor or do some checks as the counties are doing that job to make sure it's getting done? Do you have budget to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we do have the ability to see some updating, but in terms of monitoring everything, we don't do that. But counties perform voter roll maintenance on a daily basis. So if somebody dies and there's an obituary or somebody requests to be removed or they receive a notice from another county, that occurs on a daily basis.
Thank you.
All right, Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You take a look at on the performance-based budget, page 492 there. You had a program goal of migration off the AS400 by 2024. Where's that at?
Yes, we have migrated all of our business services filings. Let me take that back. We have migrated all of our business services filings off. We have some smaller filings, one being trademarks, and then the program that we use to sell and inventory law books. So those items are in the process of coming off.
And a second question. So I know one of the political challenges when the secretary was running was he wanted to have a one-stop shop for new businesses. Are you saying that right now that's 84% in process? So if somebody wants to start a new LLC, they can go to your site. They will get registered for all the stuff as far as the IRS. Everything will be taken care of in one place.
That's a great question. Thank you. So that is something that we have been working on. We have completed a significant portion of that. So if you go to the Kansas Business One Stop, you can register through there. You can also get information through through KDOR, through Department of Labor, Commerce, Ag, and then there are some additional links based on the type of business you may be filing. One of the things that we're still working on is to try and create a single login that would allow you to store or provide your information out to an agency so they could provide you more in-depth direction. So that is a process that we're still working on.
So does that include sending money, once you get a business established, sending money and everything over to the Department of Revenue for taxes?
We have not yet contemplated that. That's a great question. We're thinking more of what does the business need to complete in terms of what sort of forms they need to file. So we have not looked at whether or not we could integrate that tax component, but that's a great point for future work.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I will tell you that I don't think any of you have been on joint committee for administrative rules and regs, but it's very exciting to have an update of the regulations because you get something really thick and you get letters from the Attorney General's office that this statute is fine, you can do that, but I can't look it up because it's not online. So you have no idea what changed, you have no idea where it went, and you have to sit and try to figure that out as you're going along. So I've only done that for 7 years, so I would really, really like that. So I may have a soft touch on that one that I'd like to see because transparency is negligible in that area. So any other questions? Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Any other comments or discussion before we move on to recommendations? I have to stay closer to the microphone. I'm sorry. No? Okay. Well, we'll move back to the Office of the Governor. Do I have any motions or suggestions for the Office of the Governor? Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want a quick question for you. So just to be clear that all of the conferees that we heard, their requests are within the governor's budget, correct?
Correct. And they'd like to add, and I added it up and I put it on a piece of paper. I had it lower.
It's roughly 12 million, just short of 12 million.
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion, given the complexity of the additions to the budget, I'd like to personally review it in depth compared to some of the other things that we've discussed in appropriations. I feel like we might need to digest this one a little bit more. So I'd like to make a motion to push the decision for this till tomorrow morning, at least.
There's a motion by Representative Turk and a second by Representative Melton. Is there any discussion about the motion? All right, Representative Amix.
It's a good idea. I think that we've received, and I appreciate the representative's concern about it. We have received a lot of information in the last couple hours, or hours. And yeah, it wouldn't hurt to review this.
All right. Any other bits of discussion? If not, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will push on recommendations for tomorrow for the Office of the Governor. We will move on to the Secretary of State. What is the committee's wish on the Secretary of State? Thank you, all of you, for coming. I appreciate it. Thanks for making our hearts hurt, but hey, other than that, no worries. Yeah, oh, no, 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 no. He left his computer. What are the wishes of the committee? Representative Turk.
Guys, you're gonna have to help me out here. I can't be the only one.
I
that
know,
talks
you know,
about
there are a lot of people here
right,
that
come
could
on.
do the same thing,
it.
so.
Secretary of State seems pretty straightforward. I do have a quick question, maybe for the revisers. Was there an additional ask right at the end there? Did I miss that in testimony? Is that in this budget
It
somewhere?
is not in their budget. They did not put it in there, so I'm assuming, from what I've heard from the Secretary of State, he's spoken to leadership and other people, and I'm assuming they're going to bring it to appropriations. Would that be correct? Got to come up, got to tell us who you are. People are on video. They don't have no idea.
Jennifer Cook, Secretary of State's office. Yes, we did not put that in our budget for the 1.5 million because we weren't quite sure where we were at in the RFP process. So that would be an investment, additional investment.
So you will be coming, yes, will you be coming to appropriations for that?
We could certainly do that, or if
If the committee so
anyone else were so
feels that everyone
inclined.
should do this, yeah,
Correct.
okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you. All right, does anyone else have a question before? Does anyone else want to help? Our representative, Representative Amix.
I'd make a motion that we concur with the OBC for Secretary of State's budget for FY 2025 and FY 2026.
There's a motion on the table from Representative Amix and a second by Representative Riley. Is there any discussion? Representative Turk, so you didn't say as much as he wanted you to say.
I just hate being the only one. So in order for them to get this addition to appropriations, we need to include it in this budget, or it will advance to appropriations, and the debate will be, and it won't have any debate over it. So I will offer a substitute amendment, and then the language you might need to help me out with your team.
Maybe the
I
revisor.
want to open it up for discussion within appropriations. So my substitute amendment will essentially say to include this discussion at the appropriations level. Does that make sense? Jessica, you know about that? Not adding the money. I just wanted to be able to. Yes, I recommend the House Appropriations consider their request. Does that make sense?
It
That's
does.
my substitute motion.
Just accept that as my motion.
Will the maker of the original motion accept that to his motion? All right, so let's, excuse me. And who, you were the second? Yes. So we have an amended motion that we're going to advance the budget of the Secretary of State as recommended, with the caveat that it be the extra money from that the Secretary of State wants will be forwarded by me when I present the budget to appropriations. Are we all on the same page? All right, I'm getting there. All right. If there isn't any more discussion, I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And if there isn't anything else to come before the meeting, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks for being here, everyone. No, yeah.